Hello everyone, greetings to one and all. In today's session, we are going to concentrate on an important debugging concept, saving debugging sessions. Throughout your debugging journey, not all debugging process can be completed in a single session, right? There are going to be some very tedious debugging process where you spend many hours of debugging to find out the source of the issue or to understand the flow of the logic, etc. stuffs. There are also certain instances where you need to stop the debugging on a particular day and come back later and start again, or otherwise you have to pass it on your debugging session. You need to pass on your debugging process to some of your colleague, wherein you expect them to start from where you leave. So in short, there can be multiple instances where you have to save your debugging session. Does our debugging tool has an option or provision to save that? Yes, we have. Saving option is provided by the tool to save time and to start from where we left. And practicing these features is vital for a debugging journey. I'm going to not take much time in the theoretical process. We are directly going to jump into the demo. But before going on to demo, kindly understand there are two ways you can save your debugging sessions. One is a database and another is a file. To understand the other features of debugging that we have discussed so far, I recommend you to go through all my previous videos so that you will understand what is a session breakpoint, debugger breakpoint, external breakpoint, and other debugging facilities or features that we have discussed. I strongly recommend you to go through my previous videos so that you have a better relevance in this particular session. Now, as you're all aware of, this is the program that we have been using before. So I'm going to use the same program. Now consider I have placed a couple of breakpoints. I execute it and let me enter some value 1002. Let me check these two boxes and let me execute it. And you see we have the result getting displayed. Okay, now let me come back. Let me place this breakpoints at the initialization at selection screen, and then I'll place a breakpoint at starter selection and I'll execute. Okay, you see whatever session breakpoints that I placed is already there. I'm also going to place a debugger breakpoint on line number 16. Let's double check this particular breakpoint and watch point tab. You see three session breakpoints and one debugger breakpoints. Okay, now consider when I get into this particular selection screen, I enter some value and I start. And here again, in this particular startup selection, I am planning to look out these variables. Okay, p underscore stuid and this internal table, whether it is fetching some value. Yes, it is fetching a value. So these are the two variables that I'm trying to investigate during my debugging process. And this is where I am at during my debugging process. And I just want to exactly save this debugging session so that I can come back later or I can pass it on to my friend, right? So there can be multiple scenarios where you, with multiple purposes where you want to save the debugging session. Now, how do you save it? That's the question here. It's pretty simple. Go to your menu bar debugger, debugger session, save. As I told you, there are two options. One is file method and one is database method. Let's first work on database method. I'll choose file as the name of the, let me name the name of the session as say file one. Okay, or I can mention it as DB1 so that it is more relevant. DB1, okay, the database one. I am saving the breakpoints, watch points if there are any settings, options, variables. You can also uncheck some of the box. For example, let me not save the layout, okay? I'm because layout is not that critical for me to understand, right? So I'm saving all these five options and I'm saving it. You see I'm getting debugging session db1 saved successfully. Okay, now consider I'm completing this program. I'm removing all the breakpoints here. Okay, and in fact I'm removing all these breakpoints, save it, and I'm coming out of the program. Okay, now consider I'm removing these breakpoints as well. Okay, and I'm coming out of the program completely. Let me remove the last breakpoint. Yes, fine. Now consider my friend is logging into the same program and he wants to debug. He gets into the program. He's not finding any debuggers. Yes. So let him place up initial breakpoint which triggers, or he can also use the slash h command for triggering. In our case, let us use the slash h command instead of placing a breakpoint here. If you want to understand the significance of slash h, please go through my previous videos. Now here I place a slash h and I execute. My breakpoint is getting triggered. Now I have been already informed or I already know that there is a debugger session saved. Let me try to load the same session. Debugger, debugger session, load. Here I am the user. Let me see all the sessions that are placed in my name. I see a session called db1. Let me load db1 and I execute. You see all the debugger breakpoints, whatever I have placed would get loaded here. You see all of them gets loaded here, but they will get loaded as a debugger breakpoint. Whereas when I saved them, they got three of them got saved as a session breakpoint. One of them was a debugger breakpoint. When I load them, all of them gets loaded as a debugger breakpoint. Now save them as a session BP so that it is available for your session. I'm saving it as a session BP. Okay. I have to select all the line items and I'm saving it as a session BP. Okay, all are converted into session breakpoint. And if you see here, the variables that we're checking also as brought to the screen. Now let me simply execute using F8 option. Okay, see all the breakpoints which I placed, which are placed as part of the previous database session is now brought back. So from here, I can take further my debugging journey. I hope you understand the significance here. So saving a debugger session in the database helps us to pass it on to our friend, or we can also come back later and save our time and we can start debugging just exactly from where we left. One key point, whatever breakpoints that you have saved, when you load it back, everything gets loaded as a debugger breakpoint only. You have to explicitly save them as a session breakpoint so that it is available for your new session. Okay. Now, let me add one more detail here. Okay. Uh, I'll give 1002 execute and I'll go to the startup selection screen, and here let me add one more variable, say p underscore rb1. Okay, and I will also add one more variable p underscore rb2. Okay, now instead of saving it in the database, let me save it as file. Okay, save. I'm saving it as a file. Okay, so let the name of the file be just file, and the file name I'm planning to store it in my PC under documents. I will save it under this particular file save. Okay. And I will choose the breakpoints, watch points, settings, options, variables. Okay. I can come give any comments as well. Okay. I save it. Now I'm providing the necessary permission for saving it. Of course, I had another file with the same name, so it is overwriting, which is fine. Okay. I'm saving it. I completed my execution. I come back. Now, as I do before, I'll go to the break. I'll just delete all these breakpoints. Okay. Now consider I'm deleting all the breakpoints. I saved it so that in my breakpoints and watch points tab, you will not find any breakpoint. Okay. I completed the execution. I came back. Now the same procedure. I'll go inside. When I simply execute, the program just gets executed. But rather, now I'm going to place a slash h so that I trigger the breakpoint. Now here, I'm going to load the breakpoint, but this time I'm going to load it from the file. This file, I can either have it in my desktop or I can pass it on to my colleague as well. So here I go into the documents, I'll save the same file, I load the same file and I'll store it. You see all the breakpoints that I have loaded before, saved before as a file gets loaded again. But again, the catch here is all the breakpoints that has been loaded will be again debugger breakpoint. You can either use this save as select all and use this, or you can simply press on the save button here. So all the session debugger breakpoints get converted into session breakpoints. And in the desktop tree, if you see all the variables that was my uh, recommend to investigate will pop up here as well. Now I'll simply press F8 and my debugger stops exactly at the point where I place the breakpoint. And from here, I can continue my debugging journey. So in this session, we have seen two important features of saving a debugging session. One is directly in the database, another is saving it in a file. On both the instances, it can help you in saving time. It can help you to start your debugging process from where you left. It helps you to have discrete session or you have independent debugging sessions on the same topic. And of course, it can help you in a lot of other ways as well. You can either save it in a file and pass it on to your colleague, or you can store it in the database and inform your colleague, or you can start yourself. Depends upon your workload and depends upon your expectations. So saving feature of this debugging sessions is a very critical and significant feature that can help you with your debugging journey. Okay. The key points that we have discussed here is when we load back either through file or through database, all the debugger breakpoints will be a debugger breakpoints and it will not be a session breakpoint. You have to explicitly save it. And The F5, F6, F8 options, as we have discussed in the previous journey, we can use it explicitly because once we load the debugger sessions, the breakpoints will be there in our debugging path. And as soon as we press F8, the debugger journey will stop at the first breakpoint that we have placed. So some of the key features that I've used here, like F5, F6, F7, F8, and debugger session breakpoints, all these concepts are discussed in my previous journey. I request you all to go through my previous videos of this playlist so that you have a better understanding of this particular session. So in the coming session, we'll be discussing other key features of the debugging tool. Thank you for all for your time. See you all with some exciting sessions and videos in the future classes. Thank you all. Peace and blessings to everyone.